Hello gamers and welcome to Dark Souls 2. Finally, the continuation of our little Souls journey with the second game in the series. Now, with Dark Souls 2, I actually do remember finishing the base game. I remember getting to Majula and eventually killing Nishandra. However, I have zero idea about anything that happened in between, so this playthrough is nearly as fresh to me as someone who's playing this for the first time. And let me tell you, this game gets interesting. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Now, in Dark Souls 1, we played as the Chosen Undead, one of many cursed, yet chosen to be successor to the First Flame, and continue the Age of Man, or leave it in darkness, as you might have witnessed in my playthrough. Link the description for the whole playlist. And that takes place in Lordran. Now, after a brief bout of research, it seems there's no definitive answer as to where Drang Lake is placed in the world of Dark Souls. Drang Lake being where our adventure is set this time. Whether the two places are different locations or are the same separated by time, meaning one is set in the past and the other in the future, well, there's a lot of talk about that, so do let me know if you think there's an actual answer. But I digress. The place is as much a mystery to solve, an experience to be seen, and a battle to be won, and there's no other way to do those things than through the lens of our protagonist. They are a complete blank slate, representing that anyone can be this story's hero. But why would we want to go through all of this? You freak? Sorry. We now take the reins of another bearer of the curse, one who is doomed to turn hollow. A state of losing your humanity, becoming a literal zombie. We're called undead simply because we are unable to die, unless we can get stronger and stave off this curse. Now in the beginning of the game, it seems we sought counsel from an old woman, a firekeeper, who told us that the cure for our ailment can be found in Drang Lake. And so we take the plunge and begin our quest for a supposed cure. We wake up in the Things Betwixt, or Between. According to Merriam-Webster, the word Betwixt was coined before the 12th century. Geez, talk about old language. But this place, according to Millibeth, the NPC who looks after the old firekeepers, and just to get it out of the way of course, firekeepers, they keep to the fire. As in, they tend to the bonfires because fire represents humanity and our power over the world. Meandering thoughts aside, we are told that the Things Betwixt is, put plainly, a limbo. What simply seems as an underground cave surrounded by water but can be interpreted as a one-way void that ushers in would-be adventurers into Drang Lake. The first friendly face that we meet are these non-hostile rat dogs. You know, at least the game throws us a bit of a bone by not immediately inundating us with a tutorial boss, which is a staple of the franchise. Past them, we come across a hut built into a tree. Cozy. And here is where we find previously mentioned Millibeth, tending to the old firekeepers. We talk to them. Already they recognize why we are here, giving us the idea that we are far from the first. Their general disregard for the gravity of our situation also reveals to us that they don't expect us to be the last anytime soon. And so they give us a very uninspiring and doubt-filled speech about how we're doomed. Side note, it's always nice when the character creator is tied to the actual events of the game, like how they ask if we remember our name. Which is interesting because a sign of hollowing taking hold is losing your memory, and forgetting your own name probably says that your situation is dire.
Here's your reward for sharing.
The old woman offers us a human effigy that bears our resemblance. I mean, not really, but it was meant to be in our image. That introduces us to our character customization. I didn't spend much time here as options are fairly limited. I just went default. Pick the highest strength class because you know how we roll, and we proceed. The old lady then proceeds to give us the most poignant description of a Souls game.
Oh, I'll fool you no longer. You lose your souls. All of them. Over and over again.
And this is where we take full control. Depressing talks aside, we begin our adventure through the tutorial area. While I'm trying to take on this unnecessary fight against a hippo, which I'm now finding out is an ogre, okay, I want to talk about how divisive the community feels about this game. And I can kind of feel it myself. I'm about 12 hours into my playthrough at the time of editing, so I've already formed some opinions of the game. From my subjective thoughts, the game feels jankier compared to the older game. The rolling feels sluggish and heavy even when light rolling. You take damage mid-roll, and a lot of enemies can just stunlock you into taking more damage that you should have been able to roll out of. The recovery animations are so slow that you kind of just feel helpless even when you shouldn't be, especially given the seemingly wacky hitboxes of some enemy attacks. This all stems from a fancy schmancy system where iframes are based on a stat that you have to level up. Yes, instead of investing your stats to what matters to you and just facing the consequences of lighter equipment if you want to dodge, you instead have to divide that currency with your iframes. Not to say that it's not possible to dodge, but it feels weirder compared to the other games from the franchise. All that being said though, 12 hours in and I genuinely find this game to be enjoyable. It might be weird and jank and different, but it's still a Souls game, and whatever challenges might be thrown upon us, we will prevail. We will not go hollow. Let's quickly talk about the Hollowed. These cursed undead who have since lost their humanity, they populate a majority of our enemies' ranks. They take on many forms, but they're all the same to us. Fodder, sluggishly milling about, throwing themselves upon us with knives, swords, axes, sometimes with shields, and sometimes from a distance with bows and crossbows. Generally, most of our enemies are hollow. Some of them are just wearing nicer armor and retain a little bit of their combat training, offering us a greater challenge. But we'll talk about them as we meet them. On that note, I will mainly talk about things that are in front of us. I'll only talk about enemies that I have managed to defeat. If anything is worth pointing out, but I don't have the necessary things to interact with it, I will say so and move on. And if there are things that I did not manage to figure out, well, then that's completely on me. So, sorry if I don't manage to follow the 10 steps to get the super secret weapon of God based on a passing comment left by an NPC that I completely missed. This is, after all, just as much my experience of Dark Souls 2 as it is talking about the game itself. I think that is a lot of preamble already done, so now let's focus on the game for real now. On our leisurely stroll along the things betwixt, we find a nest standing upon it. The, creature proceeds to ask us to give something smooth and silky, which conveniently, we have a smooth and silky stone. We drop the items in the nest, receive confirmation from whatever odd creature is speaking to us, and they give us a new item in exchange. So it seems if we ever get more of these stones, this is where we can use them. On the other side of the tutorial area, we are taught how to jump in this game. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit more intuitive having the jump be a different button to your dodge. So now we run and dodge without ending up jumping into enemy attack. But I'm only talking about this part because we meet a very important celebrity.
My dog stepped on a bee.
Reaching the final section of the area, we are greeted by a statue. A particularly lifelike statue. I hazard a guess and think that until we find some sort of a cure to petrification, then there's no getting through this. And with that, we finish the tutorial area. For now. But before I go, I had this urge to go back and light all of the braziers. I don't think it will do anything, nor will I actually be able to light all of them, as it seems there are some behind the statue guy. But with any within our reach lit, we proceed through what seems to be the limbo of limbo. A cavern betwixt rock and dirt. Anticipation builds as we walk this natural corridor, but anxiety is quickly stifled as the warm glow of a golden sun slowly reaches in on the cold dark stone, and we find Majula. Exiting the things betwixt a cold dark, populated only by the wailing undead, now juxtaposed by the vista of this area, awash in homely incandescent light. Perpetually in a state of sunset, a gentle breeze fills the air. The crashing of waves below caresses this land, but also reminds us that we are trapped here, and greater forces are at play. It's a video game, yet somehow you feel as though you can breathe again. We find our first bonfire outside, and from there we espy a cloaked figure, alone, seemingly beckoning us to start conversation.
Are you the next monarch?
She asks us,
Or merely a pawn of fate? Bearer of the curse, I will remain by your side till this frail hope shatters. Take this with you. May it ease your journey.
and provides us with a familiar item. This is the Emerald Herald, our level up lady, and the one who would upgrade our flask. She also gives us our primary objective, so 'twould seem that meeting this king might be entwined with ridding ourselves of the curse. Of course, at least that's what we think. With no other direction, we take her words and we venture forth, objective in mind. We must meet the king, but to do so, we ourselves must become a formidable being. To achieve that, we must claim for ourselves 4 great souls. Simple instructions, but a whole new hell that we must endure to triumph. Before we go though, let's have a quick roundup of who else is in town. First is Malin, the armorer. Came to Drang Lake in hopes of profit. Shalqua, the nihilistic sentient cat who loves the scent of undead. Lenigrast, a sulking blacksmith who lost his keys and refuses to enter through the massive open window. And finally, Solden, this game's crestfallen character, who gives a not-so-inspiring pep talk. Beside him is an obelisk that keeps track of your deaths, as if you needed reminding of what you signed up for. If you're playing online, however, it will show you the global death count, and if you're curious, at the time of recording there are 665,303,456 deaths worldwide. Fantastic. After that dreary conversation, we take the Estus shard back to the Herald, add another use to our flask, and we can finally, actually, move on with the game. I know, crazy, but these characters really do a lot to help set up the tone of this world, add some flavor to what would simply be just a spicy soup that's only meant to hurt you. At least now you can enjoy that spice as it crawls like metal spikes down your throat. That is my metaphor for having good characters in a difficult action game. I quickly grab this Morning Star and the binoculars as they will come in handy for us. From there, we go down this cobblestone tunnel, through some waterways, which takes us to our first hurdle, Heide's Tower of Flame. Heide? 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 Whatever. We open up to this vista, old crumbling towers and pillars resembling Roman architecture, seemingly being swallowed by the ocean. Statues of unfamiliar idols adorn the walkway, the path destroyed by time. Next to us is, Swagger Souls.
Yo, we pimp chimpin'.
We can lock onto him so you know he's an enemy, but since he's not aggro, I think it wise to leave him alone for now. In all seriousness, you don't want to deal with them right now, but we'll talk about them a later time. We grab the bonfire to the side before we face our very first proper enemy, the Old Knights. Large and imposing, their massive blades intimidate us. The size tells you that these knights were trained to slay creatures larger than an average-sized man. Their armor, hefty, seemingly impenetrable, a walking, living tank. But despite their looks, their name tells a different story. Of a home across the fog. Wait, sorry, different game. The old knights, as the name implies, are old. Very old, in fact, that the aforementioned weapons and armor are already in a dire state of degradation. Blades that once won wars now inflict minor wounds. Armor that once protected a kingdom now give out even against the unremarkable steel that we brandish. These old knights come equipped with a variety of means to slaughter us. The sword and shield setup focused on multi-hit combos, the great hammer-wielding ones, who you probably don't want to block against as they will destroy your stamina bar, and those that carry a broken greatsword, that mix power and reach, but with seemingly no way of defense. Along the way, we are given these levers, which raise the platform in an area beneath the tower ahead of us. This area is actually the upcoming boss arena. With each lever you activate, the more arena we have and the less likely we will fall to our death. And yes, I've been made aware that you can trick the boss into falling off of the platform, but to make this experience as thorough, I want to fight him properly. Speaking of which, the boss of this area is the Dragon Rider. He's not a particular named adversary, but one of many elite knights that once served this fallen kingdom. The name itself isn't just there for show, however, they in fact rode wyverns, or wyverns, to aid the king in his conquest. Training was no joke as well, as some knights would succeed, but those who fail end up as their mount's dinner. Though for as cool as that sounds, the fight itself is about as close to a tutorial boss as you can get. I guess that's what you get when a warrior who main mounted combat is fought on foot. Simple single strike or short combo attacks can easily be blocked or strafed. If there was anything that this enemy is meant to teach you, it would be about patience. About learning when the right time to strike is. That is a lesson that we will be making use of for the rest of this journey. Before long, however, we do end up besting him and we are rewarded passage to the next area. Above the arena where we just claimed victory awaits what might be the greatest challenge of this run so far. A woman. This is Licia of Lindell. No, not Landell, Lindell. Licia is a faithful woman, I think. It's kind of weird that she says we are well suited to comprehend their wondrous powers when talking about faith-based miracles, when our faith is at a pathetic starting value of 5. But let's hear her out. As you would expect from what I just mentioned, Licia is our resident vendor of miracles, spells that require faith, typically of the holy kind. But since we walk the path of the strong and the mindless, what she offers is of no service to us. Before properly heading out, we make a quick trip back to Majula and bank our currently held souls. We tell the Herald all about our day and how we were harassed by a bunch of old men in crumbling armor. Dump everything into strength and we carry on to the next area. Past another old knight, we come across the first of many Cyan Knights. Cyan? Shan? Or sometimes referred to as the Royal Guard. They typically stand around valuable things or access to certain locations that are worth seeing. Now the full suit of armor and the giant shield would have been a good enough warning, kind of like how in nature, poison dart frogs are vibrant and colorful because you want to see them and you want to stay as far away as possible. However, we lack some of that survival instinct and just say, nah, I'd win. If it can take damage, it can die. And we are handsomely rewarded with sublime bone dust, a material used to increase the effects of our healing flask. Curiosity rewarded, at least this time. Moving on, we take an elevator down because why would you expect an elevator in the Souls game to take you up and somewhere bright and nice? Below, we end up in a nice castle corridor flooded in knee-high water. Remember, some of these structures are being swallowed by the waves. Here we find several undead hiding under the water, and a basilisk. I've seen enough of them in other games and I'm not interested in dealing with them at the moment. However, I will keep note of that statue, a similar looking one to the one in the Things Betwixt. Past that, we enter a cavern, littered with rock formation, suggesting that we have left the regal structure we once were in, and are now in some dark cave. A cave which opens up to the No Man's Wharf. Wooden ships hide away in this cove, entering through an opening on the side of a cliff face. Shoddy wooden structures ornament the docks. This place is home to the shady, plunderers, pillagers, and all-around ne'er-do-wells. This is not a place where kindness belongs. This is a place not worth saving. Its people never wanted to, even before the curse. A pirate's life is for them. We don't stay long, however, as very clearly I am struggling to kill even the lowly undead, and also they hurt a lot. So I thought it would probably be healthier for my mental health to look for a different path and maybe come back when we're stronger. So back to Majula we go. Burn that bone dust, giving us flask +1, bank a couple more souls, and we carry on. I decide to go up this path, above where we exited the Things Betwixt. This tunnel leads to some ruined structures, slowly being reclaimed by the overgrowth. A pathway, seemingly in endless autumn. At the end, we spot someone holding a familiar bright blue blade. This is Benhart of Jugo, bearer of a familiar blue greatsword. I don't actually know what it's called in this game yet, but that's not important. What is important is that Benhart here is a great guy, and he needs our help. He says that a lifelike statue is preventing him from making progress. If this doesn't confirm that we need to unpetrify these statues, then I don't know what will. But without a cure, we are at another impasse. Before we go though, we meet the goblins, otherwise known as Forest Grotesque, an apt name. These humanoid creatures we thought to be once human, but by some way mutated into their current deeply malformed state, carrying potent poison and those massive You know what, I'm just gonna move on. To the right of the far fire, we head down this man-made tunnel. At the end, a gate. Past that, another cavern. Ominous, but only sunlight from a small crevasse illuminating the area. But this isolation is short-lived as we immediately exit to the Forest of Fallen Giants. Now, we know that King Vendrick once waged a war against the giants, so if the name is anything to go by, then we are nearing where this battle took place. Aside from that fact though, this is a nice change of texture from crafted stone and steel. We are greeted by a flowing river that extends out from the cave we just left. Flora thrive in this area unfazed by the slow crumbling of mankind around it. Such is the beauty and power of nature. As is right, we challenge this ogre, hold him on a loop for several seconds, and once again assert dominance on these creatures. We access our first bonfire fast that we climb onto what seems to be an old castle tower. With a fog wall to my left and a number of undead on the ground, we know full well these guys are going to get up. So we get to cleaning up. Inside this fog wall we enter what looks to be some old quarters, still occupied by the undead who might have used these rooms themselves. Up through the battlements and into this church where we meet Melentia, the merchant hag. She sells some pretty useful things, though why would a merchant set up shop in the middle of hostile territory in an otherwise inaccessible structure? I don't know. It's almost like vendors in Souls games do not want to make a profit. From here we have a couple of options. A locked door above and a ladder that leads down. However, my eyes are locked on those scaffolds that line the castle walls outside, so I decide to head down there first. I've also put some points into dexterity just so I can have the buckler handy, and boy, let me tell you, it will be useful. On the way down we pass by this hole in the wall where we picked up an item earlier. This is meant to be the way back. Keep that in mind. Below, we encounter a fair few undead and a bunch of nice stuff. some human effigy, a couple of consumable souls, and even a fire-infused sword. There are also these heavily armored Ninja Turtle looking guys who is weirdly presenting his back to us for free. He was expecting us, I see. These guys, when approached from behind, will try to crush us, but only thick goth girls have that privilege, my good man. Also, there's this weird-ass looking fire lizard guarding the way to the fire sword. He's kinda goofy looking, but he's not much of a trouble. Once the place is exhausted, I had forgotten where the way back was, as I completely forgot about the hole in the castle wall, and I spent a shameful amount of time just inspecting every wall in this lower outside area, until I decided to give the scaffolds a look as well. Suffice it to say, I let out a pathetic laugh when I finally figured it out. I decide here to go back to Majula to spend some souls, but upon further inspection of Melentia's inventory, not the way that you're thinking, I found that she sells Leningrast's key. 'Twould be in my best interest that I have a smithy handy, so I buy him off her and deliver it to the sulking man. From here we go to the only current option, down the ladder, which leads us to the burning interior we caught a glimpse of earlier. Who is the cause of this blaze? Another fire lizard. You know, he's kinda cute when he's not trying to kill us. Here, several locked doors are in our way, so we just follow along the only available path currently. Past this fog wall are some houses with the roofs lined with archers. We quickly carry forward. Above this tree growing on the side is another one of those shellmen, more properly known as ironclad soldiers. Pretty self-explanatory. These are heavy units wearing all metal from head to toe, brandishing a bone-crushing giant mace. They were soldiers sent by the Iron King as reinforcement during the war against the giants. The ones we are seeing now are also old and decrepit, so are their armor. So despite their daunting build, they're easily dealt with by our Morning Star that we got from Majula at the start. Now if only I could dodge better more often. Beside the ironclad soldier is a platform, beckoning us to climb it. What meets us is a massive square. Now, I don't know about you, but seeing a massive empty space just screams threat to me, and just as I was sinking into that thought, a giant bird swoops by with an unidentifiable payload. How cool is that? I thought. Up until the point that I realized that the delivery was for me and the package was a giant hulking mass of a fighter, one who will later come to find is named the Pursuer. And he really lives up to that name. However, he doesn't know that I am his arch-rival, the Runner. Dropping from the platform, I realize that actually causes him to despawn. So I go back up and proceed to pick up all the items from the platform above.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Past that, down the ladder, we come upon a crossroads. We carefully inspect each path and notice that inside the castle walls were some ballistas, who, surprise surprise, are still active and operated by the undead. What is this, Resident Evil 5? On the other side, a massive stone sword breaches the castle walls. By the crossguard, an object calls for us to climb. You know, I really should have expected this to be a trap, but at the moment it just never crossed my mind, and I pay for it immediately. We return to the location, cautiously looking for where the trap springs, and we find them. We claim the upper hand by not fighting them on such a precarious walkway. With revenge claimed and our souls returned, we proceed once again. Here is also where we meet Pate. Clad in leather and metal, holding his pike, he speaks with a mild-mannered voice in a weirdly charismatic tone. He's seriously triggering my fight or flight. He also conveniently points us towards treasure inside what he confirms is a trap. I think I've met Patches enough times to know where this is going. So before I willingly put myself through this trap, I go and inspect the last path forward. We find two undead soldiers harassing a peculiar looking tree. Now, I already know that these are dead giants and that we are supposed to come back to them at some point once we have the right item to interact with them. But for now, we move on. Up the ladder, we reach some more battlements. To the left leads to where our trap is, so we decide to head right first. This is where those bomb-throwing guys are based. Side note, there are these invisible undead that you can kill and they drop items. I didn't really think to attack this one, I kinda just thought it's a visual glitch or that I also need a special item to interact with them, but later I make this discovery anyway. We take care of those undead and claim a couple of prizes, and now we can head for the trap. Luckily, heading this way allows us to ambush the ambush. What would have been our reward? Aromatic ooze. Sure. We speak to Pate once again, somewhat surprised that we survived the trap, truly embodying the Patches character, but one seemingly more sinister. We'll keep an eye out for him. We return to the fog wall in front of the giant sword, and that takes us behind one of the locked doors that we encountered earlier. And now, we have a shortcut back to the bonfire. In this new area, we find a leather shield. It looks like a cheese wheel and some better protective stats, so I put it on for now. After that is this lift that goes down and takes us to our next big challenge, the last giant. Remember that tree outside? Notice how it eerily resembles this guy. Well, that should clue you in that those are dead giants. Now, about the last giant, I think the name says it all already. He is, at least according to many, the last remaining living giant in the world, a survivor of the Great War. It seems that unlike his brothers that were felled in battle like the one we saw outside, this one carries with him an immense enough power that he could live and survive for as long as he did. It seems as well that the people that fought him knew this and are unable to properly dispose of him, so they end up locking him away in this dungeon for what seems to be eternity, though oddly, our presence seems to spur him into action despite his decrepit state. When it comes to this fight, it's very lackluster by today's standards, though I would imagine that at the time that Dark Souls 2 came out, he would have brought somewhat of a challenge. However, for me, having fought literal hundreds of the same enemy type in Elden Ring, he isn't really much of a threat. We keep him in a loop, staying behind him, making sure he doesn't catch us with his tap dance of death. At least not too much. Eventually we triumph and fell the last giant. Their kind, seemingly, no more. This victory grants us the Soldier Key, which provides us access to some new areas. After banking a couple of souls, adding points into Vigor, because what's better than hitting hard? Living longer to hit hard more times. We find out that the Soldier Key opens these wooden doors with a metal mesh. The first new area I explore is this dark corridor, home to a returning friend of ours. The click-clacking, scimitar-wielding, bleed-dealing son-bitches, the skeletons. Though, thankfully at the moment, they don't resurrect. Past the bone-ridden hallway, we exit onto this exterior area, in between castle and mountain, split down the middle by a massive fissure, likely more markings of an ancient conflict. This place, there are a couple of hollows, but crossing a certain threshold unleashes 3 ironclad knights and an invader named Armorer Dennis. Not exactly the most intimidating name, but I assure you Dennis is an absolute menace. He has several magic spells that he throws around, hides behind his shield constantly and relentlessly swings his sword. He promptly kills me, and me not willing to take an L, I decide to immediately make a comeback. He throws out his spell that chunks my stamina and HP. I time for a parry, but it seems that the cloud of frustration fogs my judgment. I instead lure him back to the corridors, and here I decide to just throw tactics away in favor of just R1ing him to death. But with some remaining brain activity, I use the pillars to protect me from his magic attacks. I take every opening and retaliate with a swing of my axe, and in one desperate final risky move, I dodge past his magics and I land the final blow. With Dennis gone, we can now semi-safely explore this area. A lot of useful items like more souls, a broadsword, and some leather armor, which is nice if you want a lightweight armor set, and a stylish hat. Also, another dead giant, which we'll probably want to come back to once we know what the key item is. And this gate that doesn't seem to be accessible on this side, but I notice an item on the other side, so we might stumble back here later. And the presence of a bonfire does imply there's a lot more importance to this area than we currently know. But it seems our objective lieth elsewhere. I try another one of the soldier doors and wind up in this courtyard. Another one of those Cyan Knights is present, seemingly guarding a noticeably important door. Now, I don't know about you, but when I see a knighty looking guy with a sword and shield, I think parry. So, with a tiny bit of anxiety and the possibility that I might regret this decision, I challenged this knight to a duel with my trusty buckler in hand. It went about as smoothly as I had hoped, absolutely devastating the opposition. Right before I mess up the timing though. Anyway, we take the dub, and now we are told that we must produce the symbol of the king. So obviously that's probably not gonna happen anytime soon, so we move on. One last soldier door, at least to my memory, is here where the giant sword was. Though I don't know why I decided to go through the normal route rather than the shortcut by the bonfire, but we do make it relatively unscathed. Keyword, relatively. It's here where we meet the royal swordsmen, the bravest warriors of the king chosen to join the battle against the giants. They brandish quite the imposing blades, and while they go down fairly easily, they do however pack a mighty punch. Surely not an enemy you want to drop your guard on. Above, we find a fog wall. Behind it are remnants of combat. Fallen statues now crumble on either side. This is definitely an arena. But for who, you think? Find out next time, cause I ain't dealing with it without restocking first. Okay, now we can go. But with the HP penalty kind of wearing down on us, we use an effigy, max our HP, and head on to face the Pursuer. Not much is known about this adversary besides that it hunts the undead, those who bear the curse just like we are, and it seems that we have been chosen for pursuing. This hunter levitates in the air through some unknowable magic. It is draped in dark ashen armor, seemingly impenetrable. His offhand, a giant shield as thick as our player character. Good God, ain't no weapon cutting through that thing. And speaking of weapons, the ultra great sword that it wields, a blade that could bisect any foe, large or small. Imposing in his stature, if the fit was not evidence enough of how strong this thing is, note that he just casually has about 5 or 6 weapons in a golf bag slung over his back. All of that while our undead self wears leather armor and can barely hold an axe, a mace, and 2 shields. Although by modern standards his moveset is slow and his combo short, but if you let your guard down he will hit you like a freight train. Even so, with a little bit of focus and just never letting up, we eventually best the Pursuer, but he will be back. Plenty of times. Once defeated, the product of my own hubris catches up to me as all the enemies I skipped along the way were patiently waiting outside the arena for their turn. We swiftly deal with their ranks and proceed to the next area. Now here I take note of a couple of things. Number 1, the lower area with an item. I will be coming back for that. I didn't go down yet as there was no obvious way out to me. Secondly, are some nature haters over yonder harassing another dead giant turned tree. And finally, this nest. Immediately I'm thinking, oh, it's Silky Smoothie. But now it has an interact button. Nope, it's the way to the next area. Wait, you're not mother bad. In hindsight, this was the same bird that dropped the Pursuer originally, and it is thought that the Pursuer being that he hunts undead, and the Lost Bastille being the place where the undead are locked up, maybe the bird was just trying to send us where its master is closer? And the thing is, we do fight the Pursuer a fair few times within the Lost Bastille. Meandering thoughts aside, before we our way through the Bastille, I bank my souls and return to the item past the Pursuer arena. And good thing I did, because this armor set will come in handy later on in the playthrough. It has some impressive stats, however, it is too heavy for our currently frail body, so we stash it for now. More importantly, we get the Drang Lake shield, which is heavier than our previous shield. However, this offers us 100% physical damage resistance, which is massive. With that out of the way, we return to the Lost Bastille. As I briefly mentioned before, the Lost Bastille is a prison that holds many of the persecuted undead, many of which exiled by the king himself. Despite the state of the world, members of the army still carry on their duty, making the rounds and holding their post around this old jail. Tall grey walls, simple in design but oppressive in its purpose. Iron-barred windows, gates and doors guarantee that all who enter here shall never leave alive. It's also worth noting that these structures are seemingly built on a cliff face all the way down into the deep ocean waters. Even if you can leave your cell, even if you can make it out of the buildings, there would be nowhere to run safely. Many of the enemies we encounter here are familiar to us. Undead infantry, guard dogs, and our newly found friends, the Royal Swordsmen. But besides them are these giant hulking figures in robes covered in bandage, the jailers. As the name suggests, they are responsible for keeping an eye out on would-be escapees. Their long, crude weapons instill fear into the prisoners, and they also have the ability to cast simple flame spells that could catch any runner off guard. But despite their size, they go down fairly easily. This is also where we meet Lucatiel of Mira. Born into a nation in constant conflict, she was raised to be a fighter from birth. She became a formidable one as she is a well-decorated knight. She'll tell us more about her story later on, but put simply, she is here on a quest in hopes of finding her brother, who, according to her, was an even more skilled fighter, unmatched by anyone in Mira. Though despite the reputation, he just one day went and vanished. She takes an immediate liking to us, as apparently despite the mask she wears, we still chose to interact with her. Though I feel some part of it is ignorance in that I didn't know what the mask meant, but also it should probably tell you that the simple act of talking can soften the heart of the hardiest people. Lucatiel herself unfortunately will succumb to the curse later on, slowly losing her memories, but I personally haven't seen the conclusion to that myself, so I leave the conversation up here for now. Past that, we find another path, blocked by a statue, guarded by some swordsmen and a wandering jailer. At the end of the corridor is another watching over an explosive barrel. Now here is where I find myself in a strange situation. I come to the realization that this obviously damaged wall might be breakable. However, I destroyed the explosive barrel that was previously dropped here. I tell myself, surely there's another way, so I walk around a bit. There's a giant gate surrounded by guard dogs on either side, although the lever is on the other side. There is this blocked gate where the broken wall is. Above where Lucatiel stands, a large titanite shard, and going back to the first building on the left is the pursuer. I thought, why not? Sure, I got nothing better to do, so we start a brawl. This fight doesn't change much, though besides the fact that he now has dark magic and a ranged slash attack, and also he uses his shield with his combos now. In my panic, I didn't notice at the time, but this is where I got my first fragrant branch of yore, which is the cure to petrification. Now we have access to at least one of those areas. Despite his new moves, the pursuer eventually goes down again without much friction and rewards us with twinkling titanite that is used to upgrade unique weapons. Nice. It's also here where, in an attempt to strike what I thought was an illusory wall, where I realized that there are invisible undead hiding around the world, possibly holding important items on them. Let me tell you guys, I was stuck here for so long trying to get these other barrels to roll and blowing myself up in the process. It was at this point I realized that I should reset the area and try to blow up that wall, and with no access to a bonfire, I used a homeward bone. Love it when a bone takes me home. What? We come back and we successfully roll the barrel down this time. proceed to detonate it, and lo and behold, the wall falls before us. This is Steadyhand McDuff, a skilled blacksmith. However, the state we find him in is anything but. He seems to have a few screws up in his head loose as he is visibly smithing the air. Unless of course he's forging an invisible weapon that we are too stupid to see, he keeps muttering about a fading flame over and over again, so obviously, in order to put him back together, we must find him a flame. Luckily, as we landed in Lost Bastille, we actually picked up the Dull Ember, which allows us to infuse weapons with different attributes or different damage types. However, we won't be indulging in that, so we light up his little workshop and we move on. The Lost Bastille from this side is clearly a dead end. Well, unless we spend that branch of yore, but I didn't want to yet. In the process of wandering around, I realized I wanted to check in on that blue door outside the last giant's boss room. On the way there, I noticed an ironclad soldier. Despite being close, he didn't seem aggro, so I decided to stand next to him. Now, being in an elevator next to this guy, not ideal, I'm not gonna lie. I've already accepted death, but thankfully he made it to the bottom alive and he gets stuck at the door. And you know what that means. We take advantage. From there on, I go back to the No Man's Wharf, seeing as though I don't know where else to go, and I wanted to see if I can comfortably make my way through the pirate-infested cove. And wouldn't you know it, it seems we have the damage to survive this place. This is important because we've got some competent challengers here. Some of these enemies wield swords and shields. They have a nasty 3-hit combo, and the last usually is a kick that absolutely drains your stamina. We also have these dual wielders, quite intimidating, but they're no match for a brand spanking new shield. There's also this guy with a torch that kinda just follows you around. Free flashlight, I guess? Unfortunately, he gets in the way of combat, so he doesn't last very long. But he does give me this compulsion to light up the torches in the area. This is where we meet Lucatiel again. This is where she expresses how batshit insane everything is in this place, though I'm surprised it took her this long. As thanks for indulging her in conversation, she gifts us a human effigy, but interestingly, she doesn't know what these are, but we know she's also at risk of hollowing, but if she's unable to use effigy, then she has a different curse than us? Or is it simply that we are more capable of collecting souls than her? I need to brush up on my lore after this playthrough. I also almost didn't notice, but she doesn't have her mask on here, and she clearly has half an undead face, which I find fascinating because when we lose our human form, we turn completely undead in appearance. Sadly, we must leave her company and carry on with our adventure. Past Lucatiel, we see these dark dwellers. I'm gonna be honest with you, these guys scare the shit out of me. The first time I saw them, barely visible in the dim grey of the wharf, their humanoid yet misshapen figure looms menacingly, and a face only a saint of a mother could love. They seem to have no visible eyes and a fanged mouth constantly agape. They attack with swipes from their claws, sharp enough to penetrate armor. It's here also I want to talk about bleed in Dark Souls 2, cause generally bleed does percent health damage when procced. In this game it's a little less lethal but nonetheless oppressive. Bleed in Dark Souls 2 does a fixed amount of damage, which in the late game is kind of ignorable. However, when bled, you lose a portion of your stamina temporarily. You also get loss of mobility and less sprinting, and apparently you lose some of your iframe values. So bleed itself might not outright kill you, but everything that comes after might. So another staple of the series are mimic chests, and up until this point I haven't seen one, and the anxiety is ramping up. Now, in the first game, there was an obvious tell on if it is or not. However, in this game I don't know yet how. But you know what's almost as bad as a mimic? A chest that's also a booby trap. I thought of that line at like a random 3 AM in the middle of the week. I hope you're happy. More importantly, besides this trapped chest is another chest containing the Great Sword. I'm bringing it up right now. I'm making this weapon my whole personality for the rest of the playthrough. From there, we reach the top of the pirate slums. There is a switch that rings a bell. This nautical chime beckons a ship illuminated by pale, ghostly flames. A ship straight out of legends and tall tales shared among seafarers, one that plants fear in the back of any sailor. From this vantage point, we draw our path and eventually reach the phantom ship's deck. Before that though, we meet a jovial fellow currently attempting to reach the bottom of his tankard with large resounding gulps. This is Gavlan. Gavlan wheels and Gavlan deals. If you're looking for a steal on a good deal, Gavlan is no eel. He only has good deals, and all you need to do is peel open his shop and prepare for the great deals that Gavlan wheels. Writing the script feels surreal, and my excitement I cannot conceal, so I say now with zeal I could almost squeal. Let me reveal that there are no other deals quite like those that Gavlan wheels. Jesus Christ. Below Gavlan wheels and Gavlan deals, I need to stop. Below our new friend we find the Brigand's armor set. This is special to me because I did start my Dark Souls 1 playthrough as the bandit, and really there's nothing remarkable about this armor set. However, it has pretty decent stats for how lightweight it is, at least from my experience anyway. Throughout this playthrough I still sometimes would wear the gloves or the leg parts just because I like the stats and the weight. And there he is, Evan Souls, conveniently while I'm still using the battle axe. Before proceeding to the ship again, and I promise this is the last of 2 segues, I knock down the shortcut back to the bonfire. I go back to Majula to upgrade our new large hunk of iron. I do everything in my power, consumed as many souls in my inventory to upgrade it as much as I can, and we end up with a +5 greatsword. Good lord, we are about to do some damage. Outside the ship, I did meet Carhillion, but I'm too stupid for him to even entertain a conversation with me. And on the ship, in order for us to reach the next destination, we need to find the navigation device, which is guarded by the Flexile Sentry. Conjoined lizard men clad in armor, one half performs devastating blows with twin spiked clubs that easily break your guard, but also causes bleeding. The other half, fast and unpredictable, dual-wielding scimitars. They sometimes switch between sides to confuse you with differing attack patterns and strategies. But what is strategy against overwhelming power? It's dead. I killed it fairly quickly. After that victory, we now have access to the ship's compass, allowing us to set sail, to conquer new lands, pillage to our heart's content, and we are back at the Bastille. But this time from the other side. This is a good thing, however, because now we get access to the areas of the prison that we previously were unable to reach, like this lower area behind the gate next to McDuff. This area is also where you get ambushed by the pursuer again, and this time it's a lot more entertaining because you have a couple of archers and scaffolds that you can't reach unless you break the platforms. But with the pursuer pursuing you, you won't really have time to do that. And worst of all, there's like 600 dogs waiting for you down here, so you'll want to take care of these mutts first. Just kind of skirt your way around the archers while you deal with the pursuer. He's about as healthy as he has been, and the only real gimmick this time is the ambush. So down he goes, and by the way, I blew myself up on the first attempt, but you didn't see that. After that, this is where we meet my actual least favorite enemy in this game so far besides the dogs. The dogs can go to hell. The Rupturing Hollow. These mummified freaks are the self-bombing enemies of this game. Their tactics are simple. Run up the player as fast as they can, jump at them, and then blow up. Yes, they just blow up. Now, you either get out of the way or dodge, because your shield, at least in my current state, ain't going to cut it. Thankfully, their loud chains give you ample time to mentally prepare yourself, and with their trusty hunk of iron, they go down easily, no problem. Past them, we come across a returning favorite, the gibbet lifts. My claustrophobia could never. Now we reach the backside of the Lost Bastille, and here we find the Sinner's Rise, a lone tower that juts out of the prison architecture, a structure farther out over the water than it is on land. A singular lift goes all the way down to what we could simply call the maximum security area, where the worst of the worst were being held. It is also here that we see in the distance a return of another familiar fiend, the Bell Gargoyles, but we won't talk about them for now. We take the lift down and we see the golden summon sign of our dear Lucatiel. Finally, a chance for us to fight side by side, a decorated warrior and a lonely undead, and good thing too, because what normal mob do we have in front of us? The Flexile Sentry, as just a common enemy. Sure, why not? With the help of our masked fighter friend, we fell the sentry and we proceed to poach every open cell. In one of these cells is someone in full metal armor behind a locked gate that I forgot to check back on, so let me just put that on my notes real quick. In another cell, we find another friend. I'm surprised you can have 2 phantom allies in this game, but honestly, I couldn't say no. This is Sellsword Luet. Look at this absolute unit of a lad, wearing full knight's armor and a piece of Havel set, while also wielding not 1, but 2, yes, 1 in each hand, great shields. And look at him, he's so happy to be here. With these 2 legends in tow, we move on to challenge our first great soul. The Lost Sinner. This undead is an exceptionally skilled warrior from an age-long past. The tattered clothes and long unkempt hair tell of how little kindness the flow of time provides. The sinner has been locked away in solitary confinement, probably for everyone's protection. Yet despite her condition, the lost sinner still dances and glides during the fight like she was still at her peak, though God forbid we bear witness to that. She wields a giant sleek blade that swings and flows elegantly, almost weightlessly, yet no simple mortal creature could wield this, I say as I lug around my massive hunk of iron. The fight is deceptively simple. Some short combos, big swings and stabs, but she's fast. You have to be on your guard all the time to dodge and block, but the added challenge of the darkness in the room, the lost sinner sometimes disengages into a dark corner. You see her, but you lose tracking. You can be easily overwhelmed as she reprises her attack. Besides the fact that we do so much damage, with Lucatiel and Luet, admittedly the fight becomes so much easier, and in no time at all, the lost sinner falls in battle. We claim our first of the great souls, one of 4 that represent our objective. Behind the boss room is a chest that gives us another branch of yore. That means we have 3 now in our inventory and access to those statues. And also, Elizabeth Shrooms. Shroom Grandma! Past that, when I saw the massive empty room and a bonfire with a broken sword in the middle, I was certain this was some sort of a trap. But no, these are primal bonfires, special bonfires that lead back to Majula. They're simply meant to represent that this is the end of this path, and congrats, you've just gained a great soul. Time to move on to another area. I've talked enough. Actually too much if I'm being honest, so I'm going to end the episode here. I'm so glad to be continuing this series. These games are held with such reverence, and yes, even Dark Souls 2 as kind of a black sheep. They're all special and I'm just happy I get to give them a proper go. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you made it here to the end, why not leave a like? Subscribe if you haven't, it's totally free and it helps out my channel. I'm going to be making more videos like these in the future, so I hope you'll stick around. For now though, thanks again, and see you in the next episode. Bye!